And then he said to him, and I love this verse, then he said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not lead us up from here. If your presence does not go with us, do not lead us up from here. Now I'm going to tell you what, that's about as blunt a statement as you can make. But do you know what? Moses sees the issue plainly. And the fact of the matter is if God is not in it, Moses doesn't want any part of it. And he tells God that. If you're not going to be in the midst of your people, then let's just call the whole thing off right now. Let's just call it quits right here, right now. Let's just be done. If you're not going to go up in the midst, then do not lead us up from here. Let's just stop right here, right now. And I'll tell you something. When I read that verse, it resonated with me. And there's a point where I have thought that about Word of Truth. And I think any pastor who is walking with the Lord, who really wants his church, who really wants his fellowship to be biblical, really ought to have that attitude. Because the fact of the matter is if the Lord is not in it, what are you doing? What is it built on? Is it built on man? It shouldn't be. And the fact of the matter is if the Lord is not in it, then by all means, let's shut the doors. And let's go find out where the Lord is. And let's serve Him there. Because no church should ever be operating in its own energy, in its own efforts. The Lord should always be at the very heart of what any fellowship is about. And when I read those words and I was thinking about what Moses says, he basically comes to the Lord and just puts it right there. That's about as blunt and honest language as you can possibly have. And I read that and I thought, amen. Amen to Moses for saying that. I agree with that 100%. And so he turns to the Lord and he says, if your presence does not go up with us, do not lead us up from here. Let's just stop. Let's not go one step further. Verse 16, for how then can it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not by your going with us? So that we, I and your people, may be distinguished from all the other people who are upon the face of the earth? In other words, he's saying, look, we're a people that are called by your name. But if there's not something that distinguishes us, if it's not your presence that distinguishes us and sets us apart, that somehow makes us different than everybody else, then really there's nothing. We're just like everybody else. There has to be something that distinguishes us. And that has to be your presence and your power and your working in our lives that distinguishes us and sets us apart. That we may be distinguished from all the other people who are upon the face of the earth. I love that. In verse 17 it says, and the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing of which you have spoken. Amen. Thank goodness, right? And the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing of which you have spoken, for you have found favor in my sight. And I have known you by name. And that little statement there, I have known you by name, is a very intimate phrase. It's a very intimate term. Because it's one thing to know about somebody. It's another thing to say, I know Karen. It's another thing to say, I know Jane. To say, I know you by name is to say, I know you personally. You see? And when God says these words to Moses, they're very intimate words. They're very personal. He says, "For you have found favor in my sight, and I have known you by name." And here the Lord agrees to go with Israel because of Moses' prayer and because of the Abrahamic covenant.